much?
Hey, wait!
I'll get it.
In the previous episode, we went over episodes 1 to 6 of Another, so if you haven't seen that video yet, make sure to check it out before this one. With a curse going around the class killing one person every month, our protagonist Koichi strives to find a solution. However, despite him asking around class and wondering what is going on, he is given little to no information. Now, with his teacher standing before him with a knife, he wonders if there really is anything he can do. With the teacher of the class pulling out a knife, the students wonder what his plan is. The teacher then starts tweaking, swinging the knife side to side until he stabs himself in the throat. With blood splattered everywhere, the teacher makes sure to finish the job, stabbing himself one more time into the neck. After this, the students run out of the class in a panic, but Koichi decides to investigate. The first adult to the scene is the librarian, who informs the assistant teacher to call the principal. Misaki then informs him that having two invisible students doesn't seem to work. They need to find another way. Earlier that day, the teacher spoke with the librarian about the class, telling him to take care of them. No one could have suspected that the teacher would do such a thing, including him. Following this, the librarian informs the others that once the police searched his house, what they found was disturbing. With his mother already being close to death with the addition of her son's death, she also passed away. Koichi asks if this was a part of the curse, to which the teacher explains it must be. He informs them that people will keep dying, wishing them the best to make it through the year. After learning this, Naoya decides to meet up with the other two, asking how they have been doing as invisible people. Following this, Izumi emerges and tells the two that they need to be prepared for the worst. She blames it all on Koichi, telling him other people might come after him. Despite this, she tells Koichi that it isn't his fault, telling herself she should have told Koichi the rules earlier. Misaki then informs them that a majority of the class has already fled the town. She tells them that it might make their chances of living better if they flee. Later that day, Koichi and Misaki head to the library where they go to speak with the librarian. They ask what Izumi talked to him about, to which he tells them she is trying to figure out a method to stop the madness. Koichi then asks about the Class C class from 16 years ago, it being the class his aunt attended. The librarian presents the death record of the students from that year. After inspecting it, he realizes the students stopped dying after the summer break, so he asks if something happened. He informs them he is unsure why it stopped, but they did visit a shrine on top of a mountain. Koichi wonders if they can visit it to stop the curse, but the librarian informs them that others tried and it didn't work. Following this, the assistant teacher takes over for the class and informs them they will be going on a field trip for summer break. After telling them this, she has a horrific look on her face, making the students uneasy. Before we continue, let's take a moment to answer the question of the day. What would you do to ensure your safety during the curse? Comment down below for a chance to be shouted out in the next video. Now back to the recap. Following this, Koichi has a dream of everyone looking at him while they die. They tell him it's his fault and he runs until he runs into Misaki, who informs him he is already dead. But then he wakes up from this dream by the ringing of his phone. Upon inspection, he sees his father, who is in good spirits as usual. He tries to ask about his mum again, seeing if he remembers any photos of her during her school life. He asks for a school picture, but his dad is unsure what he is talking about, showing he has no relation to the killings. He then remembers a creepy photo that his mum once had, telling him she got scared when she saw it. His dad then informs him that despite his mum dying, he still loves her a lot. Koichi then receives a call from a buddy of his who invites him to meet up with him. Koichi decides to cancel his date with Misaki to be there, but to his surprise when he arrives, it's Izumi waiting for him. She informs him that she knows about his mum's death. Following this, the waiter approaches and thanks Koichi for being kind to her brother Yuya. He gets the same order as Izumi, a standard coffee despite not being too fond of it. However, once he takes a sip, the coffee is like no other, causing him to slurp it all up in a frenzy. Izumi then asks him if he is planning on running away, to which Izumi informs him that he might not be real. She tells Koichi that his mother never gave birth to him 15 years ago, returning to the class as the invisible person. He starts thinking of this possibility, but she tells him she was just joking around with him. She then tells him to hold her hand, to which she informs him she swears she has held his hand before. Then Naoya and Yuya enter the room and sit down, acknowledging Koichi for the first time. Yuya shares that he feels like his sister might get wrapped into it all, causing her to approach. She begins to inform the others what she knows about the Class C curse, questioning a previous class member. The man tells her that it wasn't his fault everyone died, him having no other option. Before this, he mentions doing a specific thing to stop the curse from spreading without revealing what to do. Naoya then tells them they should go and talk to the man directly, but his location is unknown. They then ask Koichi if he knows where Misaki stays, in hopes of seeing if she knows anything. Once he arrives at her spot, he asks her if she will follow him to meet the man, but his attention is taken elsewhere. He looks upon the doll of Misaki and asks if it was made after her. Misaki reveals that it's of her late sister, her having died when she was only 12 years old. Misaki then informs him that she won't be able to go with him because she is going to their summer house for a week. She then asks Koichi to show her the photo her dad was talking about over the phone. She presents a piece of paper containing her phone number, asking Koichi to call her if he finds anything out. She then runs behind some curtains to hide from Koichi, making him wonder what she is doing. Once he goes back to look at her, he finds her lying in a coffin, and she tells him he isn't the one who is dead. Later that week, they finally go on the class field trip. Before this happened, however, he questioned her about how they stopped the curse from spreading. She tries to remember, but informs him that she doesn't remember anything specific changing after the field trip. Despite not being able to remember, she tells him something definitely happened on the trip. Although he got no useful information, he at least knows that there is a way to stop the curse. He then asks about the past student who was in her class, knowing he had something to do with it. She then offers to take him to the location they need to go, knowing he can't get there alone. Following this, the other students arrive and get ready to embark on a journey together. Izumi offers to give Koichi a ride, but he rejects her request, wanting to stay with his aunt. Izumi then enters his car, making the others jealous he gets the whole ride to talk with her. On the drive, they look in their surroundings to find a large 18-wheeler passing them, which makes Koichi's aunt nervous. Regardless, they make it past the car and continue down the highway to the beach. Izumi then informs them they must be safe now that they have excited the town the curse is in. His aunt speeds up and starts driving like a maniac, making the others feel uneasy. Koichi then spits some game on Izumi, telling her that she is a strong leader. He tells her that he admires her leadership skills, him never being able to bring people together. She then tells him how she became the leader, electing herself. She informs him that when the phenomenon first started, no one wanted to believe it, so she volunteered. Following this, they finally arrive at their hotel, where the man who attended the school 15 years ago works. He refuses to meet with them, but they decide not to give up, hoping to go swimming to waste time. Koichi tells them he has no swimsuit, to which he asks his aunt if she has money for him. She gives him some to get a swimsuit and shows off her own swimsuit. Following this, the group walk towards the sea, filled with excitement, unknowing what's soon to come. Despite how harsh their lives have been this school year, they finally take a chance to relax. Koichi in particular notices Misaki standing in the distance, so he approaches her, asking what she's doing here. She reminds him of her trip, and joins the others to have fun on the beach. As the day goes on, they seem to forget all about their reason for coming, playing all day in the water. Just when they thought everything would be fine, a large okra approaches Koichi. Izumi appears atop of it, revealing it's nothing more than a floaty. As they continue to play, Koichi decides to go talk with Misaki and leave the others to do whatever. He asks her about her family, to which she informs him that she isn't close to them. While talking, the two eventually connect hands under their sandcastle, bringing the two a bit closer. Following this, Koichi's aunt offers everyone else lunch, asking if they should go to the hotel or a shop. Naoya then tells them they must make the most of the beach and cook on the ocean. He then pulls out a full kit of grilling tools, making the others wonder how he got an inventory. With all the supplies they need, Naoya offers to propose a challenge for who has to cook dinner. They make 2 teams to split everyone up and head to the ocean to see who can catch the bigger fish. Koichi and Misaki don't get much luck to start, only finding various sea creatures. Then as they play around, Naoya tells them he got something big, but it appears to just be seaweed. Following this, they continue to search for various creatures until Misaki finds an octopus in a hole. Then Yuya catches something on his line, but once he pulls it out the water, it's a tiny yellow fish. With a small fish, an octopus and sea creature, they have little food to use, so they decide it's a draw. Koichi's aunt then informs them she knew they would fail, so she went and picked up ingredients. After this, they play beach volleyball until the man from the previous class emerges to greet the aunt. He tells her that she is an absolute baddie now, asking her how she changed so much. She reminds him that he changed. him turning into an old bastard with age. He then asks if he saw her recently, but neither of them are able to remember the time that they met. He asks who the students before her are, to which she informs him they are today's Class C. She asks him if he remembers anything when they attended, asking if he was the one who stopped the curse. Izumi then emerges and asks the same thing, but he tells them he only remembers someone dying on the mountain. They try to remember more about the details, but can only remember joining hands at the shrine. He reveals he left something behind at the shrine, but is unable to remember exactly what it is. He thinks hard and long, but remembers he took something from the school and presented it to the shrine. As he says this, a strong wind blows, causing the volleyball to get sucked into the ocean. One of them goes after him once they see him go underwater, thinking he drowned or something. Then he re-emerges and tells them he is okay, but he sinks once again. They see him barely floating atop the water and try to rush to save him, but are too late when a boat drives by. It cuts up the student's body and reveals that despite them going out of town, the curse still resides. After this, the other students wonder if it would be better to just lock themselves in their room rather than trying to solve the mystery. After these events, they decide to end their trip early, walking home heartbroken. The librarian then talks with Misaki and Koichi, informing them that he had a previous injury already. They tell him that before he even went to the beach, he had a bad head injury that made him sick all the time. They then question how his death was caused, to which the librarian informs them it's because he left the town with an injury. Koichi and Misaki then head to a swim set to talk about what they will do in the future. During this, Koichi thinks about all the people that have died already, wondering if it was his fault. With the death count starting to add up, the guilt is getting more and more strong. This causes Koichi to have constant nightmares, but he doesn't give up on deciphering the curse. He goes to the restaurant to meet with Naoya and Yuya, informing them what the man told him. He tells them that he left something in the classroom as a good luck charm, asking them if they have any ideas what to do. They offer to call Izumi to see if she knows anything, but he stops her, not wanting to get people involved that don't need to be. Despite this, by putting their brains together, they realize it must be something to do with the old school building. They try to figure out a time to go to the building, ultimately deciding upon 3 o'clock the following day. With Yuya in the art class, they decide to meet there, it being in the old building. Following this, they head to the building, but are stopped by 2 girls. They ask what they are up to, but once they do, their smiles turn grim. They counter by asking what they are up to, which causes Koichi to spill the beans. He explains they are trying to find a way to stop the curse, not wanting to get them involved. After hearing this, the girls rush off and wish them the best of luck, knowing they will need it. Once they get to the art room, they find Misaki alone with Yuya nowhere to be found. Misaki then questions what they are doing, but each of them don't want to answer and reveal their plan. They blame each other for wanting to meet about something, not telling the other what they are doing. Misaki figures it out and follows them to the bottom of the stairwell, leading to the rest of the old school building. With it having a sign forbidding anyone from going upstairs, they proceed cautiously. Once they get upstairs, nothing seems abrupt, all the classrooms just seeming old and forgotten. Eventually they arrive at the old Class C room, so they start inspecting everything in the area. After some time of searching through just random junk and dusty boxes, they realize that the librarian might be a part of the curse. Misaki informs them that she hears screaming coming from the library from time to time, which scares the others. She tells them it's a joke and goes to open the window, however the glass cracks. Koichi saves her and tells the others to not open any more windows. Following this, Misaki steps in a hole in the ground, causing her to trip on a locker. This falls right next to Naoya, making him scared but uninjured. Eventually, after some searching, they find an old locker that looks like it has been used recently. After inspecting inside of it, they find a box with stuff written on it, wishing for the class to get better. He opens it up to see the contents, and to his surprise, it's an old cassette tape. With this in hand, they head to the recording room that contains the machine needed to play the tape. They put it in the machine hesitantly, and it begins with the man introducing himself to the tape. He informs whoever is listening to the tape that they must be terrified but need to always keep their calm. He tells them he has 2 reasons for making the tape. His first reason to confess to a sin, and second to give advice. He starts from the beginning of how they stopped the curse, informing them they went on a trip to a local shrine. After arriving at this shrine, all 22 students decided to stay in an old building before they head to the shrine. The following day, they visited the old shrine and decided to clean it up a bit after noticing its bad condition. They then prayed at the shrine, but right after they left, the sky suddenly started pouring down on them. There was tons of lightning as well, causing the only student to bring an umbrella to get struck by lightning. After this, it kept going with another girl in the class tripping and falling to her death. During this, a man loses control of his car, and it strikes into the house of a Class C student. He then tells them that he did one last thing to end the curse, but before they can listen to it, a teacher enters the room. They are forced to pull it out and hide, but by doing so, they ruin the remainder of the tape. As this occurs, another student sits in the car with her parents, only to be driven off the cliff. After these events, the students in Class C talk about how the dead students must have to do with them trying to run away from the curse. Izumi in particular cries to herself after something happens to her brother. She kicks a can out of anger and falls down the hill she is standing on, only to find Koichi at the bottom. Back to the present, they arrive at the location in which the previous class from 15 years ago went to escape the curse. In hopes of easing the situation, the students all take a picture together with Yuya as the cameraman. They then take another photo with Naoya as the cameraman, who tries to get everyone to smile. The class knows it's a tense situation, so they are unable to smile, leading them into the building. They are welcomed by a couple who tells them they will be in charge of their well-being. Following this, the group fighting the curse replay the tape after finally fixing it. They listen as the man explains that outside of the shrine, he got into a fight with another student. Before he knew it, the student ended up dying after being impaled by a tree branch. He ran away after this and never revealed what happened to the student he killed. The following day, he went back into the forest to try and inspect the body, but to his surprise, it had vanished. He went to ask the others if they knew what happened, but they all acted like they never even knew the man who died. After this, he realizes that by killing the extra student, he was able to end the curse. He recorded this tape 2 weeks after it all went down, knowing that he would forget as he got older. After hearing this, they realized the name of the student he killed was blurred out somehow. Now that they know the way to stop the curse, their job is to now figure out who is really dead living among them. With an imposter among us, the students question if they should kill the suspect even if they find them. After this, they head to dinner where lots of eyes cautiously watch over them. However, interrupting this is Izumi, who tells the class she has something to say. She begins her speech by reminding everyone of the events that have occurred, apologizing on her behalf. She then moves on to looking at Misaki, telling her she is the main reason that this all has happened. She tells the others that because Misaki talked with Koichi, she ruined the plan and started the whole disaster. Izumi then asks Misaki to apologize to everyone in the class, blaming her for all the deaths. Misaki then asks what she wants her to apologize for, but Izumi is unable to answer. Naoya then tells the others they don't need to go this far, only needing to figure out who the extra student is. Once he mentions this, another student falls to the table and is unable to breathe after his inhaler breaks. They attempt to call an ambulance, but all of their phone lines are cut off somehow. The librarian then leaves with the student to head to the hospital, there being no other option. Koichi then suggests to his teacher that they should stay in the house and avoid the shrine. Following this, he heads inside to find Misaki waiting for him to ask him something. She informs him that she has her own room and wants to meet up with him later. After going to her room, Koichi presents a group of various photos from his aunt's yearbook, and Misaki notices something strange. He finds a student in the back of class distorted and slightly blurry, making it seem a bit strange. Misaki then tells him that mum and aunt look very similar. Koichi then asks her about the first time they met, wondering what she was doing in the hospital. She tells him she was talking to a doll, her being a bit delusional. Misaki then reveals that her mum and her aunt both grew up the same way, very close to each other. One of them had her, and the other had a baby that somehow disappeared. She continues explaining, telling Koichi that she is that baby that survived instead of Kirika's daughter. When she hit the 5th grade, she eventually learned of this, making Kirika's personality towards Misaki flip. Once Misaki told Kirika that she wanted to meet her mum, this made Kirika freak out. Misaki reveals that despite this, she would meet with her cousin who resurfaced somehow 5 years later. The two of them would always hang out in secret until she suddenly died after the 9th grade. Koichi then realizes that it had started before he even entered the class, with Misaki's cousin being the first to die. After learning this, Misaki confirms that he isn't the invisible person that they need to kill. She informs him that thanks to her doll eye, she is able to tell he is a real human. He asks her what she can see in her eye, to which she informs him she sees the color of death. This reveals that Misaki is able to see when people are close to dying, but she is unable to do anything about it. She also informs him that he is the first person she has ever told this story to. She then tells him that in the photo she could tell easily he was the dead one. He then asks her if she can figure out who is the dead one in the class, but Misaki tells him she already knows. Koichi tries to get her to tell him who it is, but before he can, Naoya runs into the room telling them he messed up. Later that day, Izumi talks with other classmates, informing them of a past Misaki. Although her name wasn't actually Misaki, she was called Misaki and forgotten. As she thinks of the possibilities of who it could be that is dead, they start to suspect Misaki. Koichi, on the other hand, is approached by Naoya, who asks if they know a student named Kazumi. They tell him, of course, they know who he is, which causes Naoya to start to freak out. He tells them he was wrong, revealing that he was sure Kazumi was the dead one. Because of this thought, he ended up killing Kazumi, hoping to end the curse once and for all. Naoya tells them his reason for killing him is because he didn't know anything that they did as children. He thought Kazumi was acting suspiciously, so he was sure that he was the imposter. He tells them he didn't mean to kill him, it just ended up happening when they fought. He tells them that he asked if they remembered Kazumi as a way to confirm whether he was right or not. Koichi then informs him that he might not be dead, 2 stories probably not being enough to kill him. He then goes to inspect the body from the window but is unable to see it anymore. Because of this, they decide to go downstairs and investigate it themselves, only to find a suspicious light behind a door. Koichi decides to investigate what's behind the door, but not his surprise, a bloody hand grabs him. After he looks down on him, he finds his back stabbed multiple times by the manager of the estate. After learning this, Koichi decides to go look behind the door, where he finds the manager of the estate in a room of fire. He freaks out and tells the others that they need to evacuate the area after seeing the fire in the room. He tells them there is someone killing others among them and that they need to group up. Naoya then informs Koichi that the body he pushed off the ledge has disappeared. Following this, a banging is heard upstairs, so they rush up to see what's going on. Once they get upstairs, they find Izumi's room covered in blood with her roommate nowhere to be seen. Then Yuya emerges and informs the others that everyone is acting strange. He tells them he told one of the classmates about the tape, and he has been acting sus ever since. They then go to inspect their room, only to find the tape recorder has vanished from their room. They decide to split up and search the building to find everyone, and inform them what's going on. With knowledge that a killer is on the loose, they decide to tell their teacher of what's going on. After entering the room, she is nowhere to be found, but a trail of blood leads farther down the hallway. They follow the trail of blood until it leads them to another room, where they find the female manager of the estate with a butcher's knife in her hand. Following this, they run away, striking the attention of Koichi and the others. When they try to go inspect it, however, they are stopped by a fellow student named Takako. She tells Izumi she is glad she is alive, but she has something she needs to do. She then pulls out a knife and tells Misaki she deserves to go back to where she belongs. During this, the manager approaches Naoya and Yuya with her knife, inflicting a slash on Naoya's leg. Takako, on the other hand, is determined to kill Misaki, even going as far to strike Koichi. However, once he overpowers her, she backs down, leading to Koichi asking how they know about the tape. Izumi reveals that Yuya spilled the beans and told everyone in the class. He asks why Takako is going after Misaki, to which she reveals she is mentally unstable. Following this, an announcement is held on the loudspeakers which plays the tape on how to end the curse. After the students hear this, they all seem to know what to do now. Takako then speaks to the speaker and informs everyone that she is sure that Misaki is the culprit. She informs them that she went to school with Misaki in elementary school, however she had her eye intact. Based on this, she believes that Misaki is the imposter, which makes the other students grab onto that hope. They just want to end this all, so they grab up weapons to kill Misaki, but the teacher stops them. She tells them that they are making a mistake but killing their classmates. The students, however, protest this, asking who the imposter is then. With her being unable to answer, the students charge in, but end up killing their teacher instead of Misaki. Amidst this, Koichi grabs Misaki's hand and runs past everyone else down the hallway. He eventually arrives at her room, but the students don't let up, banging on the door furiously. Once they get into the room, they find Misaki and Koichi climbing along the windows. One of the girls tries to take advantage of this opportunity, so she strikes at Misaki but fails and falls to her death. Following this, Misaki and Koichi look around the estate until they find a safe place. While they do this, other students inspect the room with the fire but end up suffering a similar fate to other classmates. After this, Koichi talks with Misaki, but they are interrupted when Takako stabs Koichi. She tells him that he is in her way, and she advances towards Misaki. With killing intent in her eyes, Misaki is only able to dodge, but when she does, Takako ends up falling into a trap. Her throat gets tangled in loose wires, and as she struggles more, things collapse, eventually killing her as well. After this happens, Izumi finds the two standing on the stairwell, and she sees Misaki holding a knife next to Takako's body. After being found by her, Misaki decides to run up the stairwell and she ends up making it collapse behind her. With some students out for blood and others scared of what's happening, nobody is safe no matter what you do. With students dropping like flies, the whole situation turns into chaos. During this, the manager is seen still going on her frenzy, but she is put down by the librarian. Koichi, on the other hand, looks around for Misaki, only to find all the dead bodies. During this, the librarian takes control of the situation and runs around the building, retrieving students. Despite this, however, students still go on rampages, including the thought-to-be-dead Kazami. He kills a girl in front of Koichi and tells him that he must be the imposter. He tells him that it all started when he joined the class, giving himself a reason to continue the killing. The two fight until Kazami eventually overpowers Koichi and tells him that this is a death game. He informs him that if he doesn't kill, then he will be killed, Koichi being next. Before he can end Koichi's life, however, Izumi emerges and smacks Kazami on the head. She tells him that he doesn't deserve to live after killing two people, and then she goes in to deliver the final blow. Before she can, however, the librarian enters and stops her, telling her she is only making the situation worse. He persists, however, taking the baton from Izumi and forcing her to run away. After this, he heads outside with Koichi and Kazami. Once they get outside, however, Kazami dies, bringing Naoya into a frenzy from losing his best friend. Koichi then tries to call Misaki, but he gets no response, so he starts searching the estate for her. After going upstairs, he finds every path blocked by fire except for the area across the stairwell. Over there, he finds Misaki and Izumi in a standoff to see who will die first. Koichi, however, doesn't allow her to kill Misaki, so he runs in, but gets overpowered by Izumi. As the three continue fighting, the building collapses, bringing them to the first floor. Izumi continues to strike Misaki, however, forcing her to the ground and getting on top of her. As she goes to strike Misaki, Koichi jumps in between them and stops her. He tells her that she is wrong about this, and it would be better to stop now. Izumi stops for a moment, but gets back at it again, telling Koichi if he keeps getting in her way, he will kill him too. After she says this, lightning strikes the building, collapsing the walls and glass. Following this, Izumi remembers the first time she met Koichi, finally remembering why he seemed so familiar. With her last thought, she remembers this, but gets stabbed and suffers a sad fate just like the rest of the class. Before she dies, however, she asks Koichi if he remembers the time they first met outside of the hospital. He tells her he doesn't, but before he can continue talking, more of the building collapses, ending Izumi's for good this time. After this happens, Misaki is nowhere to be found, so he decides to call her, thinking she will pick up in this situation. Surprisingly, she does answer, but sadly Misaki is unable to move in the backyard. He runs to the backyard, only to find Misaki standing before someone. He tries to save them, but Misaki alerts him that the person down there is the one who is dead. Then the person emerges before them, and to Koichi's surprise, it's not one of the students, but rather his aunt. This reveals that his teacher is also his aunt, and that she has been the dead person all along. Misaki then tells him that they never had an extra desk in the class, but rather it was in the faculty room. Despite this, however, Koichi refuses to let her end her life, so he stands before her. He then informs her that he will be the one to do it, apologizing to his aunt in the process. She pleads for her life, making Koichi wonder if he really is making the right decision. He wonders if everything Misaki said is true, but she reinforces her statement by telling Koichi that she saw his aunt die already. She informs him that over a year ago she saw his aunt die at the hands of the man who attended the academy with her. He thinks and remembers all of the clues he has had along the way from various people. Whether it was his grandparents or Misaki, everything points to his aunt being the culprit. After realizing this, he steals his resolve and prepares to end the curse for good. Then, without a second thought, he strikes her, apologizing in the process. After this, he is able to survive, eventually visiting the grave of his aunt along with Misaki. Despite her being their teacher, however, nobody in the class is able to remember her. The librarian then approaches and tells them that this year they had a total of 10 deaths between students and relatives. He informs them that he remembers his aunt dying years back but somehow forgot about it. He then offers to drive them home, but Koichi tells him they will be spending some time together in the mountains. Following this, Koichi asks Misaki when she figured out she was the imposter, but she doesn't tell him. She reminds him that it's all in the past, and they should live their lives without worrying about it. Koichi then presents the pictures that they took along with his aunt, but she is gone in the photo. He wonders if he will eventually forget about her like the other classmates. Despite how horrific the events were, however, he wishes to never forget what happened, so he can help future classes.